Whoever you think is in charge of this universe, whatever you think is in charge of everything, you do realize it's not their job to meet all of your preferences, right? I'll say it in the first person because I'm not trying to project on you guys. Whoever's in charge of this whole thing, it ain't their job to make sure Alan Stein Jr. gets all of his preferences every day. So when you look at it like that, it makes me laugh. How foolish was I to think that the universe should conspire to meet all of my preferences? There's no shortage of things for us to have very valid complaints about or to make excuses about. And almost all of those things are outside of our control. If the way we perform, the way we behave, our attitude, our optimism, if all of that is contingent on what's going on in the outside world, then we are at the mercy of whatever's going on around us. And that's dangerous. That basically means we're puppets. The analogy is, if I'm happy when it's sunny and I'm sad when it's rainy, then that means my mood hinges on whatever the weather is doing. There's nothing wrong with having preferences. I have a long list of preferences. Don't get it twisted. It is my preference for it to be sunny out. That is my preference. But I also recognize that I don't always get my preferences. And it's not so much how we behave when we get our preferences. That's easy. How do we behave when we don't? It's kind of like leadership. It's easy to lead when times are great. It's easy to lead when everything is going your way, when all of the outer circumstances line up in your favor. Real leaders are made or revealed when things aren't going so well. How do you lead in those times? That's the definition of how well we lead. So for me, now I just use it, it's kind of a game for me. I just kind of laugh to myself when my preferences aren't being met. So we were discussing earlier, I live in a suburb of Washington, D.C. We notoriously have really bad traffic most of the time. Just to be clear, it's my preference to not be in traffic. It is my preference for every car to get out of my way so I can get where I need to go whenever I want. That is my preference. You know how often I get my preference living in the DC area? Almost never. So I don't get my preference, but that's okay. How do I behave, or what happens to my mindset when I do sit in traffic? That's the big difference. And how I behave now compared to how I behaved before is completely different. Because if you look at it as like, why is this happening to me? Why is this so inconvenient for me? How come I can't get where I need to go? And you look in, many times that'll erode your mindset, as opposed to saying, I don't control traffic, this is definitely not my preference, but oh well, I'm gonna make the best of it. So how we behave when we don't get our preferences speaks volumes over not only the type of person we are, but the way that we can effectively lead others. If you lean into something expecting there will be no adversity, then the moment you're hit with adversity, now you're in kind of a mental tug of war. If instead you say, I expect there to be plenty of adversity, and when it happens, I'm going to choose to look at it as an opportunity. I'm going to appreciate the fact that it's an opportunity. I mean, it is kind of comical, but there's truth to that. Like when I'm sitting in traffic, I can appreciate the fact that I get a chance to practice being more patient and being more present, because it's a skill set that I clearly need to work on, knowing that about myself. So every time I'm put in a position where my preferences are not being met, I can flip that into having an appreciation for the opportunity to practice something that I need to get better at. Because the world will throw plenty of things at you to remind you of the areas that you need to improve. So the world throws so many things at me that will test my patience. And instead of resisting those or complaining or making excuses about those, I now just accept them and just say, all right, here's another chance to get in a rep. That's also because I believe in the power of repetition. I believe the way you get good at anything is through repetition. So if I want to get good at being patient, then I need as many reps as I can possibly get at being patient.